They call it the capital of the world. Towers of glass reach into the clouds, fortunes are made before lunch, and somewhere beneath all that gold, more than 350,000 human beings will close their eyes tonight with no roof above them. That number belongs to New York State alone. Not a war zone, not a famine, one of the wealthiest regions on earth. And if that sounds impossible, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to learn about an entire hidden population living somewhere you'd never think to look, somewhere directly beneath the feet of millions of commuters every single day. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe now because we're about to walk through every corner of this crisis, from the quietest upstate street to the darkest tunnel in Manhattan. Let's start with the scale of it because numbers this size are hard to hold in your head. As of August 2024, over 350,000 people in New York State had no permanent place to sleep. Roughly 132,000 of them find a bed in a shelter on any given night. The rest sleep outside, or crash on a relative's couch, or simply disappear into the margins of the city. Over the last 2 decades, this number has climbed by a staggering 175%. For a brief moment during the pandemic, eviction freezes and emergency funding slowed the bleeding. Then the moratoriums ended, rents kept climbing, and the crisis roared back harder than before. Here's the detail that should stop you cold. Families now make up 71% of everyone living in shelters, and nearly 46,000 of them are children. Children in the richest state in the country waking up in a shelter bed instead of their own room. And this is only the surface. Every city, every borough tells its own version of this story, and some of them will genuinely shock you. Start small in Syracuse. On any given night, only 25 to 30 people sleep unsheltered here, the lowest count on this entire list. But small numbers hide a strange and uncomfortable truth. A significant share of Syracuse's homeless population are military veterans, men and women who served their country and came home to find no home waiting for them. The city has rolled out Housing First programs, an approach that hands someone a key before demanding they fix every other problem in their life. It works when there's money behind it, but funding is thin, and Syracuse simply doesn't have the resources that bigger cities can throw at the problem. Now picture the quietest borough in New York City, Staten Island. Just 26 people are counted as unsheltered here, and you'd assume that means the crisis barely touches this place. It doesn't work that way. Low population density just makes suffering easier to hide. In recent years, the borough finally opened 3 shelters that had been stuck in planning limbo for years, offering housing for as many as 200 families, roughly 500 people, along with additional space for 50 women and another 100 individuals. A local nonprofit has stepped in to cover what government funding can't reach, distributing food, arranging medical care, and running job training programs for people the system keeps failing. But watch closely, because the moment we head north to the state capital, the picture turns far more disturbing. Albany, a city built on government buildings, historic architecture, and the machinery of higher education. And yet, roughly 750 people here have no stable home. Rising living costs and a severe shortage of affordable housing have created a gap between the city's polished image and the reality on its streets. Local officials launched a rapid intervention program aimed at getting people off the street fast. But like almost every initiative on this list, it runs into the same wall. Not enough money to match the size of the problem. Compare that to a small city like Syracuse, and the imbalance becomes obvious. Albany's homeless population is disproportionately massive for its size, and it's about to get worse the further we travel. Rochester was once a symbol of American innovation, home to Kodak and a respected university that shaped generations of engineers and thinkers. Today, roughly 883 people in Rochester have no place to call home. Picture that contrast for a second. A city that once defined progress in photography and industry, now defined instead by the widening gap between its legacy and the people falling through its cracks. Then there's Buffalo, the second largest city in the state, famous for its industrial past and its proximity to Niagara Falls. Here the number climbs to 1,432 people without stable housing. The collapse of manufacturing jobs, stubborn unemployment, and decaying housing stock left thousands stranded. And then winter arrives. Buffalo's brutal cold season doesn't just make life harder for the homeless, it multiplies their numbers as seasonal instability pushes even more people onto the street. Emergency shelters fill past capacity almost every night. forcing people to face sub-zero temperatures with nowhere left to go. Authorities have tried clearing encampments downtown, but here's the uncomfortable pattern you'll see again and again in this story. Clear a camp, and within days, people are right back where they started because there was never anywhere else for them to go. Now we step into New York City itself, and the numbers stop being statistics and start becoming impossible to ignore. In Brooklyn, famous for its bridges, its parks, and its fiercely diverse neighborhoods, homelessness has surged as rising rents push low income residents straight out of their own communities. Many of the people sleeping unsheltered here hold down jobs, sometimes more than one, and still can't scrape together enough for rent in a borough where prices keep climbing without mercy. Tensions have started boiling over in neighborhoods like Sunset Park, where residents have protested new shelters opening near their homes, worried about what it might mean for their community. But Brooklyn's struggle is nothing compared to what's happening just across the water. In Queens, celebrated for its immigrant communities and cultural diversity, more than 1,219 people are currently without a home. Even in one of the city's most prosperous boroughs, skyrocketing rent has pushed working people into the street. Most of them have jobs. Their paychecks simply don't stretch far enough anymore. Two community districts alone hold the majority of the borough's migrant shelters, fueling anxiety among longtime residents who feel decisions are being made without them. One of the most controversial moves involved converting a hotel in the Ridgewood area into an emergency shelter, a decision that ignited fierce backlash from locals who felt shut out of the process entirely. Meanwhile, Jamaica Station has quietly become an overnight refuge for people with nowhere else to sleep, turning a transit hub into something never intended and making daily commuters deeply uneasy about what their city has become. And then there's the Bronx, a borough that carries the highest poverty rate in all of New York City. Around 1,458 people here are without stable housing, and there's a detail buried in this number that's genuinely heartbreaking. This borough is the birthplace of hip hop, home to the very first museum dedicated to the genre, a global cultural landmark. And yet it's also trapped in a cycle of generational homelessness, where children grow up homeless because their parents were homeless before them and their parents before that. The Bronx has more shelters than any other borough in the city, and it still isn't enough. Encampments keep reappearing in parks and on sidewalks, and every single time officials dismantle one, another rises somewhere else within days. But even this isn't the most visible face of the crisis. That title belongs to the borough everyone recognizes on sight: Manhattan, Times Square. Glittering skyscrapers packed with more wealth per square mile than almost anywhere on the planet, and more than 4,000 people sleeping without shelter, right there among the tourists and the billboards. In a borough of 1.6 million residents, this is the sharpest, most visible collision between extreme wealth and extreme poverty in the entire country. City workers run regular cleanup operations to clear encampments from subway stations, parks, and sidewalks, but these efforts barely scratch the surface, offering a temporary illusion of order rather than any real solution. And somewhere in Upper Manhattan, something genuinely disturbing has taken shape. A tunnel near the Hudson River has become an underground slum filled with makeshift beds, mattresses, blankets, garbage, and human waste. Residents nearby have started changing their daily routes just to avoid walking past it. And no matter how many times the city clears it out, people return again and again because the alternative is worse. Zoom out to the entire city, and the total reaches 4,140 people sleeping in the streets, parks, and subway system on any given night. New York runs the largest homeless response system in the entire country, and the crisis keeps getting worse anyway, fueled by relentless rent increases and a widening gap between rich and poor. More than 150,000 people currently depend on the citywide shelter system just to have a bed at night. The city has tried replacing encampments with permanent housing, but wealthier neighborhoods keep fighting new shelters from being built near them, a pattern of resistance that keeps thousands of people stuck with nowhere to land. Now, here's the part I promised you at the beginning. Beneath everything we've just described, there's another population almost nobody talks about. They're sometimes called the Mole People, an elusive group living inside New York's sprawling network of subway tunnels and utility corridors, hidden from daylight entirely. Estimates place their numbers somewhere between 5,000 and 25,000 people. Some of them live just feet away from live electrified rail lines, one wrong step away from death, in conditions almost too extreme to imagine. This isn't just displacement anymore. It's a level of invisibility and isolation that most people will never witness, an entire underground society existing in the blind spot of one of the most surveilled cities on Earth. So, how does a state this wealthy let this happen, and what's actually being done about it? Local and state governments have leaned heavily on the housing first model, the idea that giving someone stable housing first makes it far easier to solve everything else: employment, healthcare, education. Albany's Rapid Intervention Initiative follows this exact logic. But almost every one of these programs runs into the same wall: tight budgets and limited staffing that can't keep pace with how fast the crisis is growing. That's where nonprofits step in to catch what falls through the cracks. On Staten Island, local organizations provide food, medical care, and job training. In Rochester, nonprofit groups have pushed for long term solutions rather than temporary fixes, and the dismantling of one major encampment exposed just how badly the city needs a comprehensive plan instead of short term relocations. Ordinary residents matter here, too. In Brooklyn, small business owners in Sunset Park have voiced real concern about growing visibility of homelessness nearby, sparking uncomfortable but necessary conversations about balancing economic growth with basic compassion. Public awareness campaigns are slowly working to strip away the stigma attached to homelessness, building a more supportive environment for the people living through it. Prevention matters just as much as response. Job training programs give people a path toward independence, while rental assistance and eviction prevention programs aim to stop someone from ending up on the street in the first place. Technology is starting to play a role too, with mobile apps and online platforms connecting unhoused individuals to shelters, resources, and job opportunities faster than ever, while data analysis helps agencies figure out where to send limited resources for maximum impact. None of this works without addressing mental health. A significant portion of the homeless population is also dealing with mental illness, addiction, or both, and without accessible mental health care built directly into housing programs, any solution stays incomplete. And underneath every single number in this video sits one root cause: a severe shortage of affordable housing. Rents keep climbing while low cost housing options keep shrinking, and until that imbalance is fixed at scale, through new construction, rent stabilization, and real subsidies for the people who need them most, this crisis isn't going anywhere. From the quiet streets of Syracuse to the tunnels beneath Manhattan, this is a portrait of a state pulled in two completely opposite directions at once: unmatched wealth on one side and hundreds of thousands of people with nowhere to sleep on the other. The people behind these numbers aren't statistics. They're neighbors, veterans, working parents, and children who never chose any of this. So here's the real question this video leaves you with: what does it actually take in one of the richest places on the planet to make sure nobody sleeps in a tunnel tonight? If this documentary opened your eyes, make sure you're subscribed, drop a comment with the city that shocked you the most, and check out our next deep dive, because this is far from the only hidden crisis hiding in plain sight.